Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends from around the country and literally around the world, this is another episode with your host, David J. Harris Jr. And today, friends, I have a gentleman that I've met, a gentleman that a good friend of mine, one of my prayer intercessors, actually said, you need to meet this man. I think you guys would connect on a great level. We connected at a couple events over the last year. And he's somebody that I would like to call a friend, and definitely a friend of this current administration, and a friend of the police. He's somebody that has trained law enforcement officers. We got into it a little bit, not in a bad way, but just in open dialogue, which I think is so needed in today's culture. More open, honest dialogue, listening to what the other person has to say and share, and trying to understand why they share that. I shared a video where Rayshard Brooks was shot and killed by police just recently after tussling with the police, after flinging one of the cops over his shoulder, punching one of them in the face, took his taser from him, took it from a police officer, took off and ran, then pointed that taser behind him as he was running, shot that taser at an officer, and was then fatally shot himself by the police. It led to mass rioting in the city of Atlanta in Georgia, and so many people are jumping on the bandwagon. So many people are saying, oh, it's more, proof that cops are racist. They're shooting black people for no reason. I say that's hogwash. Race had nothing to do with it. This guy was belligerent, drunk, shouldn't have resisted arrest, and that wouldn't have led to his untimely demise. He'd still be alive. He'd woken up the next day in jail in a drunk tank and would have had to handle whatever judgment was laid down for him. But Victor, and in the video I actually shared, maybe less force could have been used. Maybe, I don't know, officers should be taught to shoot in a leg or shoot somewhere that may not kill the individual. Victor had a little different take on that, and so I'm gonna read his bio, but I'm gonna go ahead and bring Victor on right now, and then I'll read his bio because it's a good one and I want everybody to hear it. But thank you so much, Victor Marks, for joining me today, my brother. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you, David, for having me on. Appreciate you. Appreciate your stand you take, the courage that you consistently display, and your ability to provide civil discourse. It's needed in this day and age.
Well, thank you, brother. That's what I try to do. And your bio is pretty amazing. I'm going to read it for everybody here. You are a high-risk humanitarian with successful missions in Iraq, Syria, North Africa, and Southeast Asia, many times in non-permissive and high-threat environments, helping orphans and widows. I mean, you're like the modern day Robin Hood, except you're dealing with some very ferocious and evil individuals. Severely abused and tortured as a child, by the time you graduated from high school, his lifestyle was filled with drugs, fights, and theft. The discipline of military life and his faith helped him recover from his traumatic childhood and empowers him to help others. Today, Victor focuses his attention to the plights of those affected by ISIS, troubled juvenile offenders, and supporting military personnel from all branches, including Special Operations Community. So, Victor, you know what you're talking about when it comes to violence, when it comes to police violence, when it comes to violent threats. I mean, dealing with ISIS in non-permissive zones. If you had been caught, I'm sure you would have been tortured and, decapitated or any of those things. You've been in the thick of it, fighting for orphans, fighting for children. So I want to honor you and commend you for that, my brother. Thank you so much for the life that you've chosen to lead. I know it hasn't been an easy one, but it's been one very worth living, and we should all honor you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and it's an honor to do what we do. And I'm surrounded by great team members, and a lot of people praying for us who support our work as well. And again, it's an honor and privilege to do what we do.
Well, again, I'm so thankful for it. So I shared in that video yesterday, obviously this is all over mainstream media right now, Rayshard Brooks getting shot by that police officer. We've seen the video, we've seen the footage, we've seen the story behind it. He was drunk, he resisted arrest, he tried to run, he wound up tussling with two police officers, flipped one of them over his shoulder, took his taser, jabbed one of them, threw a jab and struck one of the officers in the face before he then turned and ran. Now, the discrepancy, the division between so many people. There's so many people on the conservative side that are saying, well, you know what? He was right to use excessive force. The cop was right to shoot him because he fired a taser at him. I know a good friend of mine, Brandon Tatum, ex-officer. He actually said, if the taser would have hit a cop, then it could have decapacitated the police officer, and then there could have been, more damage done to the officer. My take on that is, well, there were two officers. There was one guy, he was running away, potentially maybe less excessive force, maybe less deadly force could have been used on this guy that was just being arrested for DUI. What is your take on the whole thing? Could have been less excessive force? Was it rightly used? What's your take?
Well, I can only give my perspective from, years of training, law enforcement, and working in and with criminal elements on a number of levels, right? But I can't give a position of a law enforcement officer.
Yeah.
And those situations are very unique, each and every one. But what I can say with a level of confidence is that there could have been a different outcome. And there'll be lots of speculation, back to the point where the gentleman shouldn't have been drinking, shouldn't have passed out, right? The whole conflict could have been avoided, but it wasn't. So what could be done different? One, I commend the officers for doing what I believe they felt was best. I don't think there was nefarious actions. I don't think there was any aspect of racism. You can listen to the conversation, and the initial officer is polite. He's respectful, and everything was going pretty good until the moment he went to arrest him and put hands on, and that's when things turned sideways. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
He would still be alive today had he just allowed those officers to do their job and arrest somebody that fell asleep drunk while in the car, while still in a drive-through at a Wendy's. I mean, he would still be alive had he just held up to his own responsibilities, owned up to his own responsibilities. He'd still be alive. Period.
Agreed. Agreed. So what could have been done different once the step was taken to arrest the gentleman? Well, I would say this, and again, I'm going to get different perspectives from everything from a perspective of special operations community, guys who have served, done a lot of apprehending, hunting, and killing, to standard law enforcement that must abide by policies and procedures. That's how they operate, right? And so, one, I believe if the officer would have put the gentleman in a constrained or restricted hold through a wrist control lock, that might have deterred him possibly from bouncing. But when you go to put cuffs on someone, no matter how compliant they've been up until that point, when people feel metal or know, wow, I'm about to get arrested, a lot of times that's the moment when things start to happen, right? And I think from a martial arts standpoint or control tactics or arrest tactics, he should have put him in a very secure wrist hold while he was cuffing him. I didn't see that happen. That would have been
I didn't see that happen either.
Yeah. Two.
And I know the hold you're talking about, because I haven't always been the good individual that I am right now. I actually did get a DUI back in 2000. Barely blew over the legal limit back then, but I remember that feeling when that officer put my wrist in a locking position where I really couldn't move, and then the cuffs went on and I went in the car.
Yeah. We're dealing with suspects, whether you're in the military in a combative zone, police, law enforcement, or a civilian in self-defense. There's different ways to operate, and we have different rules, right? I mean, I'm actually a lot more freer to use force in a way if I feel threatened in the street than actually a police officer, because there's under so much scrutiny, and that's if there's one thing I want people to realize today is that I believe training and policies should be different than what they are right now. Right now. Because what you end up having is two officers trying to gain control of this suspect, and it started getting bad real quick. Here's how, for your viewers and listeners, here's how it could have been different. If one of the officers would have been allowed to apply a carotid restraint hold, meaning apply pressure to stop the blood from going to the brain for just a small amount of time, it would have rendered him unconscious. There wouldn't have been fighting. There wouldn't even been used to pull out a taser. The guy wouldn't have run away. He would have been unconscious long enough for the officers to handcuff him, and then he would come to easy enough. And yet, right now in our country, I mean, I just saw some reports. There's a massive movement to take away any type of carotid restraint holds on people because of what happened. Now, this is largely due to people being ill-informed and people making policy that really don't know what they're talking about. Talk to the officers. Talk to the people who have boots on the ground doing the deal and say, what do you best need to make the best arrest, the safest, and allows you to protect yourself and your gun, right? Because officers, once they're always going hands-on, they're always concerned about the weapon. And you can't just roll around all day. But I'll tell you, there's a systemic problem, I would say, in law enforcement overall with the lack of training, extensive training for both groundwork, arrest tactics, really equipping them to be ready to do the deal. And I would say this, under the Obama era, a lot of police tactics were changed, just like military, some policy, and I don't think it was in the best interest of not only the police but the community. Because when someone's not able to do their job most effectively, everyone then becomes at a greater risk of a negative outcome. So I do believe that if we started rolling back this movement to keep officers from using and being trained in a way that would help them overcome, using some of the best techniques I believe are out there. Here's my point. Everybody's making a big hoo-ha about, again, neck restraints, carotid. It's not against the wind. It's not against the air pipe. It's against the blood. How many guys have died in the MMA world over the last 20 years because of a well-applied carotid, restraint hold?
Yeah, none that I know of.
Right? It's because they have proper training. They're professional at what they do.
Yeah, they know when to let go.
I talked to a good friend today, who has made many, many arrests as a I would say a smaller stature fella against big guys in the hood, right? But he was a Marine. He has a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and it really is game over when it comes time to put hands on for a safe, effective arrest, because he has knocked out so many guys just with a properly applied, again, pressure against the sides of the neck, not the throat. And
chokehold. It's like a chokehold.
Yeah, we even try to be careful with the semantics of it. Because
I know, I can tell.
It makes people, well, you're going to choke him, so we call it, there's different names, carotid restraint.
Yeah.
But it is very, look, I've been in a tussle or two over a number of years, and I'll tell you, it's much easier to get a person compliant through I call it the anesthesia effect, because they basically go to sleep and they'll wake up thinking, I've had guys wake up going, where am I? I thought I was at my grandmother's house riding a bicycle. Well, you could have been, but you're here now. And I even had a nefarious character show up to my home one time and attack me, right?
They knocked on the wrong door.
Well, it I would have just rather enjoyed my coffee without, a little bit of exercise that morning. But I didn't want to just start pounding this guy. And he was a very capable fighter. But the problem is I think he'd been liquored up all night by the time we got to my house on that liquid courage. And here's the deal. I put him in this restraint hold. I had him on the ground. I said, "Hey man, you need to calm down. Hey, I ain't got nothing against you." He had heard about me and whatever. He'd come to fight.
He just literally came to your house to look for a fight because he was all liquored up and thought he was bad and wanted to go pick a fight with somebody that is a real badass.
Well, that's arguably a statement where I just say I feel like more like Mr. Bean with a little bit of training over my lifetime. But I put him in this hole and I'm like, "Hey man, you need to stop, rethink this." And he goes, "You cannot choke me. I've learned the secrets of power of my neck and throat. You cannot." And I've got him like this. I'm going, "Really?" And he goes, so he went to hit me, and boom, he was asleep. And when he came to, David, he instantly goes, I told you you couldn't put me out." And I said, "Oh, well, you were." He got up and he came at me again. And this time, put him on the ground, put him out a little bit longer, because you can, there's good control. And then I actually pulled him across my property, leaned him against a fence, and then just kind of tapped his face. And when he woke up, he goes, "I told you couldn't." And he started looking around. I said, "Yeah, we were on that side a few minutes ago." I said,
wow,
we need to stop this nonsense before somebody gets really hurt. And to his credit, the next day he called me. He said, "Thank you for not taking advantage of me." He goes, "I was drunk and you put me out twice and you could have rearranged me pretty good, but you didn't." I said, "Well, I'd rather not, And again, this goes back to good training. I had good training, and I love passing that training on. And officers need that. I mean, most officers will go to the range to qualify, and they're shooting maybe, depending on the department, 6 times a year. But, I mean, they won't go in the dojo or the training hall to practice and train for rest techniques, weaponless control. And that's a huge problem. And I'm telling you, if those two guys had been trained better, or if the policy of the department allowed them to use certain techniques in weaponless defense, this would have turned out different. It wouldn't have escalated,
Yeah.
And that's my main point. And while there's a huge movement to defund police, which will be an absolutely horrible decision.
It'll be a disaster.
That if our politicians, if our people, if our leaders, including pastors who have a voice, if people don't stand up and start saying, "No, this isn't going to happen," we're going to be in a world of hurt. And people worried about the zombie attack. I go, we've lived it overseas. We've lived in areas where ISIS has decimated everything. Literally, the last pump into Iraq, my wife and I, we led a team into Syria to an ISIS confinement camp.
Wow.
And again, we're trying to do counter messaging to help women and children come out of this mindset, so they don't turn around and do horrible things. But in America, there are people who do not have the best motives in mind for Americans. And that's what we all have to remember.
Yeah.
And one thing nobody's talking about, David, and I'll tell you, is ISIS terrorists really excel in times of chaos. And the United States everybody had better stay awake for what can happen. Because I'll tell you, if bad things happen, a lot of these young people who are in these protests who really don't give a flip about the black community, because you just ask them, well, were you friends before? Will you be friends after? Or is this just a way for you to, exude your youthfulness in ridiculous ways? I went to a protest when they were tearing down a statue in New York. They were tearing down statues in New York. And actually, some of my team members, we were walking through, and I had my dog, and cops were everywhere. And I went, well, I think I'll go join the protest. And I walked in the middle, and I sat down with a group of these, pretty committed protesters. And I had my dog, and we sat down. And I go, hey, what are y'all protesting? And they go, the statue. We want that statue torn down. I said, oh, wow. Well, where is it? And they were like, well, we think it's over on like 53rd or somewhere. We don't know
They didn't
where
even know.
it is, but yeah. And all these cops in riot gear. And I said, wow. I said, I really like y'all's moxie. I mean, y'all are out here very committed. They're like, yes, yeah. And I said, you know what? We need y'all's energy and youthfulness in Iraq. Because we go to camps where kids and women have been abused and tortured and hurt and refugee and IDPs, and we need y'all to come over there and show some love to these people who really need it. And they were like, really? I go, yeah. Would you want to make a difference in someone's life right away? And again, I think most of this, I tell people I'm not a fan of the Black Lives Matter organization or movement, but I do appreciate the message. They're wanting better. And I'm always to help people do better, but you've got to base your goals on truth and not just perception, because perception is people's reality, and it can really skew what needs to be done. So, and keep issues separate. I really believe that the law enforcement right now, they need our support more than anything.
Absolutely.
When you have officers walking off the job because leadership is not covering them, not protecting them, you got a problem. And I think if anything needs to change in law enforcement is better leadership, because the politics and the pressure that certain leaders feel, many of them turn weak. And if you're going to turn weak, how do you protect and support your troops out on the front line? So that's one thing. Another thing, I really do think training, there should be an accountability level and a change in training structure where police officers who are going to be on the street in contact with people need to be able to handle themselves well. I think we've hired a lot of people to be guards and not warriors. And you need warriors out there. And men and women who go, hey, the moment I put that belt on or get into that car, move, I need to be ready and able to scrap, to be able to get a person under control to protect themselves, the public, or myself, right? So we're lacking that. We've done a lot of training in certain aspects of, sensitivity training, but sometimes, you got to be able to hurt people's feelings to protect them from hurting others. And I think we lack that sorely. So most law enforcement people I know, really, the 99%, I would say, is accurate. They work hard, they do their job, but without support, without, I would say, better funding for what will matter and helping them, our country's going to be in a hurt lot, for sure.
Now, you said something a minute ago. You said that Obama, underneath the Obama administration, he had made some changes in policies that actually hurt or damaged the police and what they were able to do. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, police and military. Let's start with this aspect because right now I travel to military bases and I speak on resiliency, spiritual fitness, and I help both active duty who are training new recruits, and then I speak to the actual recruits because a lot of people don't realize just in the Army, they changed their training cycle. They almost doubled the amount of time it takes to create a soldier because of what culture and society has produced in a lot of young people. Let's start there, okay? So in the old days, like when I went through the Marine Corps back, actually my commander-in-chief was President Reagan. So that dates me, and I'm proud of it. Tell people we used gunpowder and wagon wheels to do our assaulting. But you know what? Young people coming into the military today, they don't have resiliency. So if you yell at them, if you put pressure on them, they collapse. If you go, you'll never, they go, I know. And then they quickly go to this suicidal mentality. Well, I'm not going to make it. I can't. So I'm helping to retrain the approach to getting better results from the cadre and people who have to work with the next generation, right? And I think policing, under the Obama administration, just like he did to the military, he really gutted and took away the power of spirituality. The incredible, like the chaplaincy corps, he really undid them and did not allow them to do their job. So, hey, I believe we need to love everybody, but our love's got to be based in truth.
Yes.
And, this moral relativism doesn't work. So what's true for me but doesn't have to be true for you. No, there's got to be a baseline of what's right and wrong. And, otherwise, crazy things happen. Just like prayer was taken out of school. Now, we started our ministry, almost 20 years ago, reaching children, kids, teens who've been incarcerated in our country. And, I mean, we've given away probably close to 100,000 copies of my book or my story because it relates to them. But I remember how odd it was where I couldn't go into a public school and talk about God because of the change of society. But youth prisons with felons, I mean, they would tell me, hey, if you want to talk about God, Jesus, anything you want. And I thought, well, I think if we would have done more about talking about God and giving morals and in the public school system, there'd be less kids here.
Absolutely.
And there'd be, less broken families. So, yeah, I wasn't a fan of a lot of policies that President Obama put into place. And yet, I think we're able to change the direction that we've been in the area of spirituality. Again, I think faith will make a big difference. In police forcing. I mean, I just got a text this morning saying, Victor, our police department, where this particular text came from, they go, our officers need help with just mental health, right? So one of the things that we excel in is trauma-based recovery, healing, both for vets, civilians, law enforcement, and people who encounter. Like, someone just sent me a text, an officer that's been on point up in the Seattle area with all that stuff. A veteran is struggling more mentally now, emotionally, than his tours overseas.
Wow.
Because it's so messed up. So I'll tell you, we need to bring faith in as a component to help law enforcement. We need to build resiliency. And we need to reward people who stand in the gap between the manifestation of evil and us. We need to reward them through pay, through letting it be known it's a great career that's honorable to be in. And then those who are in it that shouldn't be. Well, it's just like being in any specialized unit. You know, you may get in it, but doesn't mean you're going to stay in it. And there needs to be that real, honest self-policing. And it's hard because you get chided working against just negative people every day, and then you want to protect your own. But we need to get to a place to where a level of professionalism is not only required, but it's demanded,
Yes.
so that officers are in a better place to do their job better. Again, through training,
Yes.
I think better pay, better selection qualification, even outside sourcing to come in to have a third party assess their arrest tactics, their control techniques, that's outside of the department to make people go, well, I need to pass that. And this may hurt some people's feelings, and that's okay. But you know what? Cops that are out of shape, they need to not be on the street. If they're long in
Amen.
tooth or young and out of shape, we need better rigorous fitness. And I'll give you, I don't want to. I'll just say this: I assisted an officer not long ago, and apprehending a suspect. They were in a fight, and the officer was about to draw his weapon, and I just happened to be there, and my dog, a canine, at the right time. And the assisting officer who came on the scene, he was in the chase, but he was a long way away. And this very good man probably had a number of years in, and I respect him. But by the time he got to where we were, his breathing was so labored. He's hunched over, and he literally couldn't even assist. And he pulls his cuffs out and hands them to me and says, "Can you cuff the guy?" I go,
Wow.
"Yeah, no problem." And again, at a certain point, you have to do self-assessment. I mean, I'm currently on a 5-week getaway writing a book with co-writing with a book, Chad Robichaux, who was in Special Operations and Marshall Marine and runs an incredible organization, Mighty Oaks, and he's also a founding chairman of Faith-Based Service Alliance, right, for veterans, which is new, that I'm part of. And we're writing a book on leadership, and the first point, which is we're basing on 11 principles of Marine Corps leadership, is self-assessment, self-awareness. You got to be able to really ask yourself, and men get prideful, or we get stuck in a system that, doesn't keep us at our peak, but allows for diminished professionalism, both physically and mentally, and in the job of law enforcement, you can't. And I'll just tell on myself, because there was a situation not long ago where ISIS was still active in a location in Iraq, and we were going in to help specifically women and children, but we were in a very heated combat zone, and some of our team, as needed, will wear proper kit or carry weapons to defend ourselves. We're not there to engage the enemy. That was never our goal, but sometimes we were forced to. And here's the point. I remember leaning against the wall, pulling on a AK mag and changing mags in a weapon platform that I had. And I was struggling to get the magazine into the AK, magazine well. And it wasn't because of the way it's shaped. It's because my hand and arm was so weak. I had compressed neck issues in my arm and atrophied so bad, it was hard for me to hold a cup of coffee. And I remember trying to load this mag, and you know what? I sat there going, "What are you doing? You've just become a liability for the team.
Wow.
You're leading them, but you got to be honest with yourself. You can't hide this anymore." And actually, after that time in, I came back to the States, and as I lead our organization, and by the encouragement of my wife,
Thank God for godly and bold and courageous women.
Oh man, thank goodness. Yeah, I got surgery and was able to regain the strength and all that. So, but my point is this, in any profession, especially where people have to protect and serve the community, law enforcement officers need to do honest assessments. And, better training, better selection, qualification will help them in what they do, and better funding.
Yeah, it's pretty scary that we're in a time right now where so many Democrats are pushing for defunding the police. And then to hear what you shared about your friend that reached out to you from Seattle, a veteran, Leo, that is now more mentally distraught than when they spent time overseas. The mental drain and strain on our law enforcement officers, not only dealing with what's happening in their city, potentially in their own cities, but then having to hear what's taking place in other cities, that's got to be a strain. And then to hear that politicians and city councils like in Minneapolis are voting to and pushing to defund the police, it's putting the entire police department across the country, the entire police force in jeopardy. And then who's going to want to join the police? I mean, you think about it another generation from now, 10, 20 years from now, when law enforcement officers are retiring, who right now out there is going to want to fill the shoes of a law enforcement officer to protect and serve their community when they see the way that law enforcement officers are being treated and talked about today by the mainstream media?
I agree. Words create worlds, right, David? And we need to be very careful what's communicated through our words, and honor and courage and the level of commitment that law enforcement officers take when they step in the job. We need to celebrate that, right? We need to celebrate the 99% of encounters that they have with the public are good and positive. And, everything going on right now, it is a good time because like I wrote on my social media platforms, I said, I don't think this is going away anytime soon. And the incident in Atlanta, all it did was refuel what the antagonists want. And we have to be solution oriented so that the future generations do have a very solid, respectable, honorable profession in law enforcement in all aspects. You think about the SWAT team or the, reaction teams that have walked out and resigned because they didn't have great leadership. The people who are going to pay for this are older people. Me and my single females. We're trained. I mean, my wife, we've literally learned to fight back to back, spiritually and physically. We have black belts, we have training, all of that. But the people who are going to pay the price are those who aren't capable, because nefarious criminals they're just going to take advantage of all this. So when you seek solutions, leaders and people who even repost stuff, they need to really think through, what am I communicating? What am I adding to? Is it solution oriented? And I'll give you a great example. I've got very good friends who are in ministry, pastors, and a good friend, a fellow Marine. He's been pastoring for years. Good guy, really good guy. We're in our conversation, and he said, Victor, you better be careful, because right now, if you're just posting on fatherlessness in the black community, black on black crime, these different things. He said, if you're only focusing on that at this particular time, although those are true issues, he goes, why don't you just weep with the black community over loss, over recognition of what problems there have been occurred? And he said, it doesn't mean you have to give up truth, but can't you just hurt with us? And I said, absolutely. I said, it was never my intention to think not that I did. Even when I saw the officer, when I first reviewed that video of him being shot, they broke my heart. I mean, literally, I'm thinking, this is a dad. This is a man. He's a human soul. And if we don't go back to looking at people as created in the image of God, everyone has value, no matter left, right, black, white, rich, poor, whatever, Christian,
Yes.
Muslim, atheist. If we don't look at people as being created in the image of God, then you become a terrorist organization in your mind. You become a terrorist because there is no value. And, and it doesn't mean we appease or because there's a lot of that going on. And I wish a lot more men in ministry would take a stand for what they blatantly know is not right, instead of just appeasing. But to be solution oriented, we can't rule out love, and that's what I appreciate about you. You bring it around to, hey, ultimately, what is this about, right? And we're all going to die, and it is our job to, exhibit the love of Christ, help men and women understand that they're loved and valued, and I think help them understand their identity. That's one of the
Yes.
biggest problems, right? Is who are you? Does a cop feel the need because he was smacked in the face or his taser taken? Is he really responding because he fears for this guy could hurt other people? Or is he responding out of, you're not going to do that to me, and losing his anger? I don't know. I don't know him, right? But I know that
we will
does
never
happen,
know.
right? Was the gentleman who resisted arrest and fought and Rashid and all that, was he transferring his anger against these two guys, going, this ain't gonna happen to me, you can't, we don't know. But I'll tell you, we need to start looking at everybody as being humans and then help people find their identity and value. Should people be responsible for their actions? All the time. Do I
Yes.
believe in justice? Ask ISIS. As I sat in the Pentagon speaking to senior leadership, and they were asking me questions about certain aspects of leadership, and I thought, well, why are you guys asking me? And they go, well, you're the only one at the table that has an ISIS headband, and that you brought
Wow.
back from Iraq. I thought, oh, well, yeah, okay. But the basic core of leadership is we have to take care of people that are under us, people that work with us, people that look up to us. And then as a Christian, are we not supposed to show love even to our enemy? So I
Yes.
think that's a good starting place. Listen, hear, keep our boundaries, hold people accountable. But it's almost like in fighting. When you're really comfortable and somebody's threatening you, it doesn't really get to you.
Doesn't feel
Because
threatening.
you're knowing, no, it's like, there's only air and probably fear on your part in between, and I can't tell you how many times I've had encounters where some guy wants to get with it, and I'm like, hey, I got scar tissue older than you, young man. Why do you want to do this? One or both of us end up in the hospital. I remember one guy came into one of my training centers, and he came in, he was ready to fight me. And I was like, whoa. And he had his master behind him. It was like a movie, honestly. And he goes, I'm here to challenge you. I saw you on TV, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, really? I said, well, what do I get out of it if I win? He goes, you can say you beat me. And I said, well, I've had years of, all I want, and I said, is there any other way out of this? Because you look pretty tuned up. He goes, well, you can yield. I said, yield? What does that mean? And I'd actually got him to sit down next to me. I said, can we sit down? I've been working. I'm kind of tired. I got him to sit down, right? I'm de-escalating.
Yeah.
And then I used verbal judo. And I'm like, well, what should I? He says, well, yield. I said, what does that mean? He goes, you just say I yield, and then I win. I go, and we don't have to fight? He goes, right. I go, oh, I yield. He jumped up and he bowed to me and he shook my hand. He said, thank you, sir. And I said, I think you're a little bit more worried than I was about all this. And he walked out because he had, so, I think too, it wouldn't be a great thing if people in our culture really valued older people's wisdom.
Absolutely.
And insight, because there's so much the younger generation can draw down if they just humble themselves and just listen.
Yeah.
That's been about me for my whole life. I mean, I've gone into, care facilities for senior citizens, don't know anybody, and go to the little day room and go, pull up a chair. Hey, how you doing? And I'm like, just start a conversation. What'd you do with your life?
Wow.
Tell me about you. And
yeah, there's a whole lot of wisdom in those homes.
Oh, man, I would draw so much wisdom out of these people. And it was an honor for me. So, yeah, I certainly think there's great things for the future if, and again, I'll just speak to Christians or people of moral values and faith. You don't always have to pound a person to make something happen. You can use the anesthesia to accomplish what you want and being able to get to a solution. So, we're building out a training center at Colorado Springs, and we're going to be offering training all for law enforcement, special operations, church security teams, husband and wives, men who want to come, and we'll teach everything from A to Z on how people can be better prepared. And really, remember, I'm always talking about finding their identity, be comfortable with who they are. And I think if we start better selection and qualification in the law enforcement community and equipping those who are already there, helping young guys become good warriors. And what if there's no other choice in many cities but to take some of the funding from a department and reallocate it to develop some type of additional partnership with people who could do community policing.
Yeah.
What if that's not an option any longer? It will happen. We have to think through some of these things and be prepared to step into that position with well-trained people who can help. They live in the community. There's responsibility, there's accountability, there's love, there are more ways to do it. And I think law enforcement, knowing that the community respects them a lot more and is for them, and they don't have to get out their car every time and wonder if this guy's going to jump out and shoot me. Again, I've lived some things overseas where I've sat down with a senior Islamic leader who signed the doctorate degree of the leader of ISIS.
Wow.
And developed a relationship with him.
Wow.
And he was the one who took me to a place where persecuted Christians in Iraq had fled. And he walked me into this place and he said, these are your people. What are you going to do?
Wow.
And we were able to get many, many persecuted Christian families who were fleeing, get them out of the country to a different country in the region safely. And so I just think good communication, civil dialogue, facts, not just perception of reality, and can help our country, which is in many ways imploding in different cities, and we see it. And I think the grace of God, and if people, last thing I'll say, I think if people, Christians, will humble themselves before God Almighty and turn from their wicked ways, things that they know are wrong, confess sin. I used to be so racist, not toward blacks, but toward Arabs.
Wow.
Hated Arabs. That's why I joined the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps the day after the Beirut bombing.
Wow.
And I hated Arabs. I wanted to kill them. And you can see videos on our website or our YouTube page where my wife and I have a house in Iraq, a safe house, where we were taking Muslim children in who had just been orphaned, their parents killed, and walking with them and feeding them and dancing with them and holding them at night, including our children, 2 of our teenagers that we brought one summer to Iraq, holding and playing with. And they would ask me, Muslims would all ask me, and they still do, why are you here? What are you doing? And I just say, well, God loves me. He gives me a love for y'all. He changed my heart because I used to just want to kill y'all.
Wow.
And,
you tell him that?
Yes.
Talk about keeping it real.
Well, the first time I met the gentleman who was a thought leader of over 300 million Muslims and whatnot, we sat down. Do you know the first question I asked him?
What?
Because it was a very specific mission. I flew into Iraq and got out in 72 hours because of the risk of this. I sat down with him. The first question I asked him, I said, sir, do you want to cut my head off?
Wow.
And my interpreter, who had worked for Delta, and I had a very good security team, he looks at me and goes, I do not think this is the good thing to ask. I said, ask him. And he asked the guy, and we call him the professor to keep his name out of everything. The professor leans back, and he just started laughing. He said, why would I want to cut your head off? I invite you here to speak to you. Why would I cut your head off? I said, well, that's what we're seeing on the news. Because it was right in the heyday of ISIS beheading people. And I said, that's what we're seeing. See the power of media, right? And he goes, I want to meet with you. I said, well, I'm interested. Why? Because, he goes, we've watched you for 2 years and you care about our children. He goes, you are a man of the book and you care about our children. So I want to help you. And he did. And just between me and you, because I know no one else is watching this, he one day he asked me, he said, would you like to know where an ISIS training camp is?
Wow.
I said, well, what would you like me to do with the information if you give it to me? He said, these are very wicked men.
Wow.
Very wicked. He said, they should die. I said, all right. I know I have some friends who that's what they do for a living. And and we help her to finish. So, again,
all because you were loving on the kids for years. Absolutely. And he took notice. He couldn't help but notice.
Yep. So that's what's going to make the difference in our country with people who are hurting. Because I believe with all my heart that a lot of hurting people, and again, I'm willing to be misunderstood to try to get a solution and help. But I think a lot of hurting people in the Black community, they're transferring their anger. It's a transference of anger.
Yeah, and bitterness.
Culturally, it's justified. It's very justified. But I think that the truth of it all, it's not righteous.
That's right.
And they're very nefarious groups. I got an encrypted text today from someone who is he leads he guards a very well-known person overseas in a Muslim country. He's in charge of the guard. And he just said, Victor, he said, you do know there are other groups playing into this, trying to destroy America. It's an insurgency. And I said, yes, I do realize that. Wow. And I really hope Americans wake up to understand it's more. So what do? We must address pain and trauma for people who've experienced certain things. I've experienced bad situations with law enforcement. And
Me too.
And so I get it, right? I mean,
yeah, not just the time I was pulled over for drunk driving, but I've been pulled over for no reason, profiled and pulled over, had a gun pointed at my face. And I walked away from every single one of those things because I didn't resist. I had nothing to hide. And I said, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am. And I complied. And I don't hold any ill will towards the police.
And that's the reality. That's why when people go, I don't know why the black community is complaining. And I go, well, there's experience that would give them, but then we get in trouble if the pendulum swings all the way and everybody goes, all police are bad. I was like, well, you got to stop that. That's nonsense. Right. Our team had come back from Iraq. This wasn't long ago. And we were in a hotel, and hotel security got a little excited. They called law enforcement. They came because I have security guys, and me and my wife, and we carry. I mean, it's all legal, but we have very significant reasons why we do and how we carry ourselves, right? But anyway, boom, boom, knock on the door. And one of the officers was a young guy. Who knows? He may have been a training kid, and that may be but he got aggressive and talk about unprofessional. And he really just was humiliating me in front of my wife. So much so that when she opened the door, she's like, "What's going on?" He starts yelling at her, "Get out of here!" And it was bad. It was a bad situation. And I just come back from Iraq, so you feel a little wound tight, and I was just like, hey. And thank goodness I prayed, because I could have, I could have launched into, whole highly hell against this guy.
Yeah, an emotional response.
But I just thought it was very, And, all I could tell him was, hey, I'm one of the good guys. I don't know what you don't know. You run. And thank the Lord that the older officer, he said, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Were you ever at a certain police department training guys?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Didn't you assist with the arrest of a guy as a civilian and you were awarded the chief of police, like special civilian?" Yeah. He goes, "And I'm sorry. Stand up." And I was like, okay. And then the young guy, his face white, blood drawn from him, like, dude.
He thought he had found himself a big-time drug dealer or something with all the ammunition and stuff. He thought he found himself that way.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. And everything legal, because the moment, he's like, well, I said, hey, I know why you're here. And that we shouldn't have an issue, but he just got to. So, people do have reasons because of life experiences.
Right.
And again, you get a seasoned, older officer. He's there for solutions, and hey, let's. But that's why it's so important. I go back to good training, good leadership, fund them well for what they need, and so that when they start making their encounters and contacts on the street, they don't have an insecurity and a fear that they have to. And it's
yeah, they can't be responding out of fear.
No, or ego. So
yeah, or ego. Well, I agree with you 100%, my brother. I think that we need a heck of a lot more special training that our officers need to go through. I stand with and I support all of our brothers and sisters in blue. We need to support them with better funding, better pay. And then hope that they do what you said, hold themselves to a higher standard above everything else. I'm really interested in your training facility in Colorado. I'd love to bring my wife out there and spend some time and go through your training course.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're finishing. It's kind of incredible. I'm not gonna lie. This is something that's new, and our instructors are all seasoned special operations guys with experience, and we're there. If people have the will, we'll give them the skill, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I look forward. You know what? We'll give y'all a little VIP package for you and your bride. We'll take care of y'all really good, because you do a lot for our country, man, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Victor. I look forward to that. So I Am Victor Marks is your website. That is where they can get your book. That's where they can find out about your ministry. I hope all my viewers and listeners support Victor in his fight. He's doing amazing things, not only in this country, but around the world. He's got a heart of gold. He's got a message that God is using, and we need his message so much right now. The history that he has, his upbringing, what he went through, what he overcame, and how he overcame it, and who he gives credit to is exactly the message that so many Americans and people all over the country, over the world, need to hear. So I Am Victor Marks with an X, M-A-R-X, like you see on the screen. Unless you're listening, IamVictorMarks.com. Get to his website, get his book, and maybe join me if you can in Colorado. I'm definitely going to be checking out your training facility there, brother. I would appreciate the tour. Whatever you do, give to my wife and I. I know we'd love it. I know we'd absolutely love it.
Well, it's going to be great. Looking forward to it. Love you. Take care. Stay dangerous and full of God's love.
Sounds good, my brother. I will. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. I'd love to have you back on again. That was an amazing, impactful, and insightful episode, but I think there was so much more to share. We were really starting to get into some stuff, too, towards the end, so I'd love to have you back on again soon, all right?
Let's do it.
All right, sounds good, my brother. God bless you, man. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon. So friends, there you have it, man. What an amazing story. What an amazing story of overcoming adversity, being tortured as a child, and now he literally saves women and children in some of the most dangerous parts of the world. Victor Marks is a true American hero. Friends, this episode brought to you also by MyPillow.com. MyPillow, a true patriot. Mike Lindell is a friend of mine. He's somebody that absolutely is not bowing to the politically correct left individuals and their narrative. He's somebody that is supporting individuals like me in our fight to bring the truth to the masses. His sheets are incredible. I have them. I love them. I have his pillow topper, his mattress topper. Absolutely love it. It's like having a brand new mattress that's even nicer than the mattress that we've had for a couple years that was not cheap. But love his mattress topper. Pillows, I love his pillows. His sheets, you can get, and everything comes with a 10-year warranty. It's all amazing stuff. So go to MyPillow.com and use the code DAVID. You'll save up to 60%, depending on what you choose. You'll save up to 60% when you use the code DAVID at MyPillow.com. So go there today, support Mike, and you're also supporting my show and my podcast. And please spread the word. Share this podcast with 10, 15, 20 friends. Help me spread the word about the message that I'm trying to bring that you're not going to hear on the mainstream media. God bless you. We'll talk to you all again soon. Bye-bye.